Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we're going to discuss the 2023 plan for the top garden. Let's get going. When we juxtapose the top garden to the old garden, we should have vegetables growing in this from late winter until early winter. The idea is we want to have salad greens for as much of the year as we can absolutely possibly have them. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and take a look. So let's start on the south side of the garden. Leslie will talk about the outside of the fence and the perimeter here in a bit. But if we start here with this long bed, this will always be a carrot bed. Now in the summertime, we'll probably have some pollinators in there kind of planted intermittently. But right now we have baby carrots. They're real small coming up, and these guys will grow all year. Right around mid-June, we'll pull them out and we'll start replacing them with a few pollinators, and then we will replant this in middle September. So if we move on to these next two rows, this is where we currently have all of our salad greens planted. You can see up here we have a few. What we like to do is try to take advantage of all of these, but predominantly this bed and that bed will house most of the salad greens throughout the majority of the springtime. So these beds up here, they'll be planted with lettuces and greens, but we'll eat almost all of that salad first, and then we'll come back and start eating this through the primary part of the late spring into early summer. And what that does is allow us to plant the other beds with the summer crops. So in here now we just have radishes, beets, we have black seeded Simpson and butter crunch, and both of these beds are planted similarly. The only difference is we planted the lettuce up there a little bit denser than this one just to see how the results go. We also wanted to plant them this way just to see if there is a big difference in the amount of sun these two beds get. Yeah, before we move on, I just want to point something out. Last year I was terrible at the transition between seasons. So from spring to summer and then summer into fall, my cadence on that was terrible. So I put a lot of time and effort into kind of reviewing what my mistakes were last year, and I'm hoping to remedy that this year. So you're going to kind of hear me talk about that throughout this video, about this is going to be the spring and fall and this will be the summer. I'm hoping that I can get my schedule is on point and I don't have that same mistake as last year. Moving our way to the middle row of our beds. This bed, just like last year, will contain the ground cherries. As you can see, the ground cherries did phenomenal in 2022. This year, we're gonna dial it back a little bit. We put 8 ground cherries in the bed. This upcoming year, we're gonna dial it back to 5, and we're gonna plant them all on the north side of the bed and let them kind of grow towards the sun to the south. What I think is gonna happen is it'll keep it out of the walkways, because last year these guys got a little out of control and they were hard to work around. Continuing on the middle row, the next bed is going to contain all of the eggplant and yellow squash that we're going to grow on the homestead this year. We do like to grow a lot of the early yellow crookneck. We don't grow a lot of the midsummer yellow squashes. We like zucchini in the middle of the summer. So what we plan on doing is putting the early yellow squash in at the same time as the eggplant. The early yellow squash, it'll kind of swell in size for a couple weeks. You'll get a whole lot of squash on it, and then it'll kind of burn itself out. That way you can remove the yellow squash, and as the summer progresses into July and August and your eggplants start to kind of swell in size, they'll have the room and the squash won't be there to kind of encumber them in their progress. So this bed here on the north side of the top garden, this is where we're going to predominantly grow our zucchini plants. Now last year we grew a lot of zucchini plants. We got a lot of zucchini, but the way we ended up growing them, because we had so many plants, they kind of overcrowded each other and they weren't able to fight off disease and pests. And to be perfectly honest, by the time end of July rolled around, I was done dealing with the zucchini. So what I'm hoping is this year I can just take this area here, I can put in 4 zucchini plants, kind of let them have the run of the bed, and I'm hoping that it kind of cuts down on the labor involved in the zucchini plants. So the final bed on the north side of the top garden is going to be our cherry tomatoes. Now I'm showing the beefsteak tomatoes here from last year. They did really well in this bed, and what we're hoping is we're going to build the trellis about 10 foot tall so that these indeterminate cherry tomatoes have room to kind of spread out as the summer progresses. The ones we grew in our raised beds last year did really well. The only problem is with them being in those taller pallet beds, it was really difficult to get to the tops of them, so I sort of trained them down again. So this year I'm hoping in these shorter beds that the cherry tomatoes will have a bit more room and be a bit more accessible towards the end of the summer. So the last bed in the top garden is going to be our sweet pepper bed. In here we're going to plant 4 of each variety, and those varieties are bell peppers, pimento peppers, and the sweet banana peppers. Last year we did really well on peppers, but we just overcrowded them. So the strategy this year is going to be reduce the number that we grew by 1 and put them in a larger bed to see if by the end of the year that increases productivity by subtracting the number of plants. All right, let's see what Leslie's going to do with the perimeter of the top garden.
Hey everyone, so we've got 3 perimeter beds around the top garden, and I kind of wanted to break down and let you know what we're planning on doing with them and what's going to be placed there to kind of help out with pollinators and our main goal of bringing those pollinating insects in to help our other veggies in their fruiting process. Let's take a quick look. So this first outer perimeter space that we've got is going to be mainly for our wildflower mix. We have a few bags that we purchased at that plant sale back in October of last year that we were able to get pretty cheap, and this has been my wildflower space for the last 3 years, and it's worked out really well. Plus it adds a splash of color and it's just pretty to look at. So for this space, a couple of the wildflower mixes that I have, they cover about 200 square feet, and this is a little under that, about 136 square feet, so it'll be great for this space. But I plan on sprinkling that out through here, and it's got several wildflowers such as cosmos, zinnias, there's some poppies in there, just random flowers that kind of do well for pollinators. And then on the outer edges, I've also at the far end down there, you can't really see it from here, but there is a rose bush that is a variegated knockout rose that's pink and white, and it's hardy in our zone 7B, and it does really well throughout winter, so overwintering is not an issue. And I went ahead and got it in the ground so the roots have time to establish, and hopefully we'll get some blooms on it this year. If not, it'll be next spring. On this edge down here, I took some old irises bulbs that I had dug up that have been here for 20 plus years. They're beautiful. They bring in a lot of pollinators themselves, and I thought it would be a nice little change here on the edge to kind of help filter the root system and make sure that we don't have a lot of runoff on this outer edge, because I don't block this so we can get the tiller in. But that's the goal for this perimeter. Now, of course, we already had this little bed established that I put in last year, and I did this mainly because we visited our local Master Gardener's plant sale, and I got some bee balm. We call it a butterfly bush. That's pretty much what it is. It's beautiful. You can use it for a lot of herbal remedies, and it has great fragrance. It brings in those pollinating insects that you want, but it's in this space and it's bouncing back from its winter dormancy. Next to it is our lemon balm. This thing is so fragrant. I love lemon balm tea. You can make teas out of this. You can just take the fresh leaves and eat them. This is just a great plant to have in your garden, and it will get pretty tall. It'll bush out, but it'll also bring in those pollinating insects. So I thought those were a great idea to include in this space. And then, all right, so as I was saying, this is our last perimeter bed that we have around the top garden. This one has been here for, this will be the 3rd year, I do believe. It's great. Last year I had some snapdragons in there, some calendulas, some petunias, and they did really well. I do want to pack this full of pollinating plants just because it adds that splash of color, and I felt like I didn't have a lot of those plants and that variety in this bed last year, and so it kind of struggled. But I definitely don't want them to compete for space, so I will be spacing it out. But in this bed mainly, I will have my snapdragons again this year. They did really well in this space. They get plenty of sun and they're fun to look at. I also have some cosmos that I started from seed, alyssum, baby's breath, some calendulas, and I did start a whole new flat of petunias. I love petunias. They bring in hummingbirds. One downside, they do bring in the hummingbird moths, which are the moths responsible for hornworms. And
well, we appreciate all you folks sticking it out with us till the end. Till next time, I hope everyone takes care of themselves. Peace.